For the topic of cultural appropriation, one revolutionary in particular has not only made strides to shut down cultural appropriation, but also to empower minorities in their struggle to be seen as equal in our society. This revolutionary, who goes by the name K. Tempest Bradford, is an African-American science fiction and fantasy author and editor. Bradford is an activist for racial and gender equality, not only in real life, but also as far as representation in the science fiction community. In 2005, she founded the Angry Black Woman blog, whose posts have been featured in everything from feminist blogs to African American studies textbooks. K. Tempest Bradford is an alumni of New York University's Gallatin School of Individualized Study. Of her long list of revolutionary works which she has dedicated her life to producing, I want to specifically focus on one essay titled Cultural Appropriation is, in fact, Indefensible, which was a response to an article from the New York Times titled In Defense of Cultural Appropriation. This original article, written by Kenan Malik, who uses his role as a writer rather than an editor to get away with saying controversial things, states that it is just as well that I'm a writer, not an editor. Were I editing a newspaper or magazine, I might soon be out of a job. For this is an essay in defense of cultural appropriation. In her essay, K. Tempest Bradford points out that Kenan is not the first person to defend cultural appropriation, that he joins a long list of people whose actions are inexcusable. Bradford claims that amongst people who defend cultural appropriation, they all either don't understand what it is, misinterpret it to muddy the conversation, or ignore its complexity, discarding any nuances and making it easy to dismiss both appropriation and those who object it. I think that this is an excellent point, as this sentence describes how ignorance is at the root of many of today's problems, including the issue of cultural appropriation. She points out that people do not understand what the issue actually is, as they either simply Google a two-sentence definition, or they go based off of what they hear. This simply leads to more and more confusion, and if people do not understand what a problem is or what it represents, then there is no way that it can be fixed. In her essay, Bradford points out an important distinction between appropriation and exchange. Appropriation involves a power imbalance, in which one group profits and the oppressed group gets nothing. For K. Tempest Bradford, the issue causing people to not understand this issue stems from the fact that those who see appropriation as simply exchange are those who profit from it. In her conclusion, Bradford states that, because I believe that, instead of giving people excuses for why appropriation can't be avoided, because it can, or allowing them to think it is no big deal, even though it is more important to help them become better artists whose creations contribute to cultural understanding and growth that benefits us all. This, in part, is why Bradford is inspirational to me as a revolutionary. She is okay with the idea of calling out people for incorrect statements or just blatant ignorance. Bradford had no issue with calling out Kenan on his ideas, which were incredibly misleading and problematic for revolutionaries who are trying to deal with this issue. If someone read this article without understanding what issues there were with the article and why the article is not accurately representative of the issue, then they would go the rest of their life believing that cultural appropriation is no big deal and that it's something that is actually great, including Kenan's analogy that Elvis's stealing of African American music was an important cultural phenomenon. However, it is much more than this, because Elvis's ideas were simply oppression, as he was taking advantage of the fact that he could profit from their music while they could not. In short, cultural appropriation is part of a larger issue involving power imbalances between minorities and their oppressors, and it is something which continues to put down minorities and continue to basically trip them up beyond the more harsh and blatant acts of imperialism.